almost hit the wrong button there. Hey, everybody. Here we are back with an episode. We got Andrea Waltz. So go for no with us today. Talk about really what happens when we go for no during the holidays. How do high performers unwind? And do they even rest?
Let's go.
To the HPLS podcast. Live, relevant, and high performance information, conversations, and education weekly.
So not to bring up the past or anything, but I could tell you that COVID and then what I've been through over the last 7 months has really taught me to relax. Where I never really never really did ever relax. It was always go, go, go. And even right now, so you think about it, right? There's very little sales that's going to happen between now and the new year, right? You got to be pretty far along your sales process. You got to be pretty far along for somebody to say, okay, you know what, especially in logistics, right? I can't wait to possibly screw up my network so I cannot be relaxed for December, right? Or I'm going on vacation or and I mean, I know that's obviously a way far out, but it's an idea that I thought we'd have a lot of fun with today. Because how do high performers like yourselves, like myself, how do you relax during the holiday season? Andrew, what do you do different now than you would do, say, at the beginning of Q1 or Q2 of a new year?
Yeah, it's a great question. And sometimes you do really have to force yourself to relax. And when something like what has happened to you is completely out of your control, it almost is one of these things where you really have to just say, okay, I'm not in control. I'm going to force myself to relax. And that's happened to me a couple times as well. But to your point, Dan, for me, for this time of year, I'm in planning mode already for next year. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't see a lot of opportunity. In fact, I don't like one of my pet peeves is the excuse making that happens around holidays, Fridays. There's always Mondays. Well, that's not a good day. And by the time you're done, you can end up
Wednesday afternoon between 2 and 4.
Yes, I was literally going to say that exact day and time.
Mine's think alike. I do it.
Right.
It was what is the bottom end of yeah.
What's the window? Yes. So I think because of that, so I'm going away from the relaxing for a second and I'm going into productivity and I'm thinking to myself, well, if everybody else thinks that this is a non-opportune time, what can I be doing to at least get the ball rolling for next year? I don't expect anything to close this year, especially in my business too. There's probably not, but in my business,
not to interrupt you, would you not have verbal commitments for next year?
Yeah.
Saying hey, we've got something coming up in January, or we got something coming up in March. Why don't we touch base in January? Because I think you guys would be perfect.
Yeah,
do you
absolutely.
have those kind of things? Okay.
Absolutely. And I think, and I don't know, this is a really interesting question too, to ask you guys. I have noticed since COVID that decision-making, the time frame for decisions is so much shorter. I don't know if that's across industries, but it used to be that if we were going to get an engagement in January or February, we would hear from people in the spring, in the summer. Now I'm talking to people about January and February now in December. And I expect that I might get a few more inquiries even in December for Q1. And so it's I think what it is people are more used to uncertainty and they're more apt to make decisions in a shorter time frame. But I don't know if that's across all industries.
That's interesting. Jeff, what have you seen?
Yeah, I mean, I was just talking about that before, with the volatility of the market and the way that it's going up and down, the RFP season is kind of short because it's unpredictable. Okay, so that shortens the time frame in which my clients at least are reaching out to me and wanting to have that conversation, because it's like you have that conversation and then a short while later you're having that conversation again because the market is changing. So it's that adaptability. What's yes now is no later, and then what's no now is yes later. It's like it's bouncing all over the place, but it is short, at least for me, and I'm pretty sure that others are facing the same thing, where their clients are actually watching the market as well, because a lot of them are smart out there and following it and saying, hey, Jeff, you need to look at this, or hey, Dan, you need to look at this, and so you're always reinventing that wheel, and you don't know when that's going to come. So what I do is that I kind of predict what they're going to do. If they change one lane, there's a high probability they're going to ask to change something on the next lane down there. So you try to get ahead of that curve before it's asked, because it's coming down the road.
Interesting. I found when so we've had a turn of capacity in our market, Andrea, where there's a lot more trucks than there is freight now. Prior to that, decisions were made very quickly, because if you had the ability to get something done, you got business. And it's like Warren Buffett said, right? When the tide's in, everybody's riding it. When the tide goes out, you see who's naked. Because it's and we talked about this last week, I think, Jeff, on our show, where the good salespeople are the ones that still produce in times that we're about to go through in our industry, right? In the slow times, the good salespeople, the ones that actually bring value and are not just about the commission.
Correct.
I found since the capacity turned, there's a little bit less of that emergency, I guess, or that feel, that need to make a fast decision. If you've been involved and you've been having a lot of really in-depth conversations and good conversations, then the decisions are still made fairly quickly. But if you're just starting, like I have some people I'm just starting to solicit, and I'm not one of those pushy people, and I can feel the need for just, okay, we're just going to take it slow, because no real need for them to switch. Everything is going fine. Right. So it's finding that niche that you can get into where you're really going to add another layer of value to the customer. And I think that's something that's forgotten in a lot of industries, especially our industry, is you as a sales rep, what unique value do you add to the mix? Right. Like you look at you and Richard, when you guys get on stage, you guys have a dynamic presence, and that value of making know the objective and making know the goal. It's like, wow. Like we've had people on this show that have sent me DMs saying, totally blew my mind and just gave me a totally different opinion of sales. You guys have this unique value that you can add to an audience that not very many other people have, if anyone, right? Because it's the mindset shift. For us in logistics, it's like, well, what do you do differently than anyone else? And I would put money on the fact that most salespeople can't answer that question.
I'll tell you one thing real quick, that high probability more than ever that there's a no on the shipper side, or the one that's receiving those calls.
Sure.
But on like you were talking about, the new entrepreneur that are just getting into the industry, they're making those phone calls. They're making a lot of phone calls right now because they don't know any better, so they're going for it. So yeah, I guess they're going for no, right? Because they're at a high level of making all those calls daily. And here the receivers, especially this time of year, is like, no, we're not interested. I mean, I guess that just goes with it, but you don't stop pushing forward. I mean, you have to continue to push forward, but they'll realize that this is not the season to be reaching out, because they have the shippers have other things in mind that they're focusing in on.
But
so Jeff,
go
well,
ahead,
no,
Andrew.
I think it's really important people recognize this. And so kind of to combine this idea, Dan, of relaxing, but also what can we do to prepare for next year? And can you switch up the calls from expectation of getting business to offering value. And so also to your point, Dan, of calling somebody and saying, hey, I'm not calling thinking,
Right.
I know that you guys are in a place right now where you're not looking to do this right now. You're not looking to make decisions. Here's why I'm calling. I'm calling to offer something else, or I'm calling to ask you a quick question. Maybe gather some information, just make the connection so they know who you are, but tell them up front.
Right.
I already know it's a no. I'm not calling
already
to
know.
I'm not calling to collect a decision from you. I'm calling for another reason. And I think that's the way to at least stay connected, because if the whole thing is, well, I'm not going to do anything until next year, until I'm just calling for a commission, then yeah, it's going to be harder.
Yeah, more
Well,
of
and
an
I think
introductory call.
you're coming at it at a completely different angle, which is going to be like, what? Like everybody's calling saying, okay, hey, how's your business? We know how you set up, da da da. Hey, listen, I'm not calling to, expect a deal today or tomorrow or even this year. But I thought I'd call and see what's your plans for Q1, what's your plans for Q2, and maybe if we're congruent, if we connect, maybe we could talk about something down the line. To me, I'd be like, who are you? Like, well, I'll have a conversation, because now they expect it's like
The pressure's off.
well,
Pressure's off.
it's like you ever answer the phone and somebody goes, hey, how are you? And you're like, oh my God, this is a sales call, right? Like, how many of us, come on. And I know we're in sales, and it's like, and you think to yourself, do I do that? Like,
Right.
and not, hi, how are you? Well, if you
Right.
are doing that, then please stop. But it's like, in my head, I go, I wonder how I come across when somebody answers the phone. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's a great way to just flip the script on somebody. And or you come in with that big piece of value,
Right.
that big statement, that big, whatever it is that kind of stops somebody in their tracks. But I agree. I used to take this time of year when I was selling logistics, and I would have conversations about, well, if I were to take the next 5 weeks and come up with a solution to what your goals are for 2023, because every company has their goals by now for the next year, right? So anyone that would say, well, we're trying to do this, we're trying to, we're trying to reduce the merge. And I would say, well, if I took the next 5 weeks and just came up with some possible solutions, would you hear me out at the beginning of January? And that was it. That was, and most of the people would be like, yeah, for sure. I said, okay, I just need 5 minutes of your time just to gather a bit of information. I'll send you the odd email. I'm not going to inundate you. I don't want your business between now and Christmas, because that would be foolish for me to ask for it when I just told you what I wanted to do. But I might need the odd piece of information. What timeline can I expect for you to get back to me? And I was pretty specific. But that conversation allowed me, and this is where this mental productivity comes in, right? Because, you hit Friday and you're like, oh my God, I feel like I just pissed the week away. Or you hit Friday and you're like, I set up some pretty good deals for the future. And that's what it's like golf, right? The 18th hole, you can have the worst game on earth. On the 18th hole, you hit a beautiful shot. You're like, man, I can't wait to play again. You just went through 4.5 hours of misery and one shot. And you're like, hot dang, man, I can't wait to get this again. Right? Yeah. And it's like, and that for me is what keeps that momentum going, because if you can line up 10, 12 presentations where you're working an hour a day on just a really valuable solution, and then you get to the new year and like you're blasting out 2023 in this rocket ship where everybody's still trying to put fuel in their car. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yes. And it reminds me too of what Jeff was just saying about making all these calls. So maybe the idea is slow down to speed up. So maybe, going for no in the holiday season isn't so much about quantity, but it's quality. So take the time.
Exactly.
Take the time to go through and figure out who your really ideal prospects are that you want to build on, and focus on those. Pick 25 out for the next 5 weeks.
Yeah, and to get that knowledge bank, pick out those prospects that you want to hit on 2023. Find out who that individual is that you want to reach out to, their background, their likes, their dislikes, the the verticals in which they work in. Find out the company who that individual works for. Where are those facilities? You know, what they do, how they do it, when they do it. And then this way you have a little bit more bullets in your gun. So when you do reach out to it, there's your value. You know about the business. You have that experience. You have that knowledge. You don't have to go for the kill on the freight. You can talk about their logistics operations and go in the back door, sort of speaking, and take that pressure off that shipper that, you know, I'm not here to talk about moving your freight on day one. You have many other different things and topics to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a perfect time this year. You know,
and I also think, and Jeff, and for both of you, I think you're going to find if you do that, you're going to have a much more authentic and valuable conversation, right? Because guards are down, walls are down. They're not like, okay, if I say something to you, like, oh, you know, like, okay, well, for the 25 loads a week that I move, you're not going to, oh my God, 25 loads a week. Like, you know, you're just kind of, everything's baseline. Yeah, authentic conversation. And I think you'll gather a million times more info than you would on a sales call, right? Like Andrea, so when you make a sales call, are you going in for the book us, or are you going in for the, let me see if we're obviously if the mission of the company is congruent with where we go. Like, walk us through kind of that mindset that you have of going for no.
Well,
in
mine
your first, and then continue forward.
So my goal is always disqualification. And the reason for that is that I don't want to spend a lot of time, even if I believe they should, convincing someone to hire an outside speaker trainer if it's just something they've never done before. I think there's a place for that. And if it's a client or well, they're not a client, they're a prospect. If they're a prospect that I really love, like, I think, gosh, we would be so perfect, and they don't do it, I might invest more time in saying, hey, this is something that you might want to consider. Do this new thing, maybe do it over Zoom. But so my process, and it's always been this way, is disqualification. So to your point of, hi, how are you? Oh, never, never. If I'm calling somebody, I'm saying, hey, I'm Andrea Waltz. I'm professional speaker. I'm co-author of a book called Go for No. I'm calling to find out to see if you guys have an annual sales conference or annual meeting where you bring in professional speakers. That's my question. Yeah. That's my question every time. And if they say, and sometimes people will give me more information on that, like no, but, or, and then I'll get more information, or yes, but we just had our meeting. And then I can say, great. I always respond positively. I always love when I get information. So I'm always like, oh, thank you so much. Who did you have? That's like such a huge data point for me. Like, why did you hire them? It gives me such good information. And then, you know, how can I get, you know, can I stay in touch with you for next year? When do you guys make your decision? All of those extra questions. But that first question is my disqualifier. And if they say like, no, we don't bring in speakers from the outside, a lot of people don't. They'll have speakers, but it's from their own organization, or it's the president, you know, and I'm always thinking, you know, in my head, I'm thinking, stop having the president talk. They hear him all year, like, or her, please, like, just bring somebody else in. But I just don't spend my time there trying to convince or persuade.
It's interesting that you said disqualify. My first order of business is to qualify. But it's interesting.
But it's the same thing. It's just reversed.
It's the same thing, but you go for no, right? So you disqualify. And so I was actually very happy to hear that, because I truly believe the first thing you should do in sales is figure out if you're a match, right? If these people do not have an AGM, if they never have any events, if the company doesn't have anything, you don't want to spend more than 10 seconds on the phone with them, because you got other things to do.
That's all they have, Dan. They only have 10 seconds. I mean, these big shippers out there, you know it as well, they're getting blindsided every single day. They're getting like 30 calls a day. They don't have the time to spend on the phone with you. So you need that 10-second intro that's going to grab their attention. They'll be like, what did you say? You know, instead of like, here's another guy with the same freaking pitch, you know? So this is a great time to figure out that value, and how are you going to have that opening when you call up these prospects. It's a great time these next 5 weeks to do that.
You know,
Right?
here's one for everyone. Just kind of popped in my head. Do you believe that your logistics partner can help you achieve your goals in 2023? There's your 10 seconds. And, you know, now they're like, huh, because they've already achieved their goals. So the company's already said, we want a 5% rate reduction. We want a, OS&D down from 20% to 10. Like there's already the goals established for every corporation already has. And if they don't, run, because it's going to be a nightmare all year, because they're going to bounce. Like they're going to bounce all over the place. Well, I want this today. And then tomorrow I want you to be able to do this. And none of it's going to be possible. But, that kind of thing. Because if they don't believe, it'd be like Andrea saying, do you believe a speaker can help shift the mindset of your entire sales team?
Right.
And if the person says no, then you're asking a rock to make chocolate pudding, right? Because if they, and that was just a really weird analogy. I don't know.
I love that though. I love
Did
that.
you see that?
I was like, okay.
Sometimes I don't know where. I think it's because I really want chocolate pudding.
That sounds good. I'm going with it.
It does. It does.
It sounded really good up here, and then it came out, and I'm like, that's really weird. But I tend to do that a lot. So it's like now, you're not trying to convince anybody. If they say, I believe wholeheartedly that my logistics partner is an asset to helping me do this, let's have a conversation. I'm not interested in selling you today because I know that'd be stupid. But I truly believe that a speaker can truly shift the mindset of my sales team. Then you know what? Let's talk, because we'll show you some productivity numbers that when we walked off stage, this is what's happened to companies. Now you're having a conversation where you're both on that same path.
I think it's really important too to kind of frame like what you want from people. And the how are you question, or I've had calls from salespeople where they'll ask a really interesting open-ended question. And I know that their goal is to find out, like they're trying to find out what my needs are, right? But they're asking this question in such a way that it's like, where is this going? Like, I don't necessarily want to have this whole long dialogue with you. Is this a 15-minute like powwow between you and I about my accounting software, or whatever? And so you start worrying, like, where is this going? And so I just remember one of the sales not techniques, it's like platforms, ideas that Richard and I studied early on that informs how we operate in our business is something called high probability selling. And this guy, Jacques Worth, wrote this book called High Probability Selling. And he was always saying, you show respect to people by how you treat their time. So if you get on the phone, let's say, and you call somebody and you act like their time isn't valuable and you're just going to build rapport and have these long conversations, even though you're helping them solve a problem, you're not being respectful of their time. That's why high probability selling is all about disqualifying in every step of the process. And at any point that you get a no, you're out. You're just out. And so, and his whole thing also is build the relationship. The sale is where you build the relationship. It's not in the prospecting activity. So there's like a difference between prospecting and sales. So I think if you do reach out and you do want to do that, just frame it in such a way that, hey, I loved your opening question, Dan, but give people a heads up. Like, I don't want to take a long time. I've got like a couple questions for you. This is going to take 90 minutes, but I think it could make a big difference for you going forward. And just so that they know, like, what are the parameters of this conversation?
That's good. And there's a high probability that we're going to do the lane of the day too.
That's right.
Man, we're having some good segues this week, Andrea. I got to tell you, that was a great segue.
That
So
was.
today, it's a van load from Ontario, California to Fort Worth, Texas. Check this out. Line haul rate per mile, $1.87. All in with fuel surcharge, $2.52. Contracted rates are $2.98. So we're talking like less than 40 cents difference. All in. So year over year, line haul rate per mile change, $1.78 less. Year over year, that's huge. $1.78 is almost somebody's full rates for most. That's a monster drop. Some upward movement in the rate after a decline in October. The current rate is 17 cents higher than the October average. So even at $1.78 less than last year, it's 17 cents higher than the October average. That's Lane of Day, sponsored by DAT. Thank you very much. You know, Andrea, you're absolutely right on that point. Before we did the Lane of the Day, you know, asking that question, do you believe that your logistics company can be an asset to help you achieve your goals in 2023? Yes, I do. Do you mind if we take 2 minutes to explore that? Or do you mind if I share with you a couple of observations, ask you a few questions? It's going to take less than a minute and a half. I always like to use that kind of odd number. You know, it'll take 3 minutes, because if you say 5 minutes, somebody's always thinking, well, it's 15, because anytime somebody says, hey, can I get 5 minutes? It's like, I better clear 30 minutes of my calendar now, because like it's all, you know, so I love using those odd times. But that's a point that I think I even miss a lot, is that respect for the other person's time. I mean, in my head, I'm like, I'm going to take no more than 2 minutes, but to actually come out and say it means a world of difference. Because if they're thinking, oh my God, here we go, just this is going to be another yapping salesperson like this guy Dan on this show that just fucking yaps and yaps and yaps and yaps. And then I say to Jeff, I'm doing 30-second blurbs today. He's like, oh, perfect, man. I don't have to hear you anymore. He's going to be more inclined to show up for tomorrow's show. You know what I mean?
Right.
Geez, that just took the wind out of everybody.
Right. But, seriously, you know, being in that seat on the receiving side, and I said it many, many times, they don't have that time. They don't have that time, especially if in their big operation and they're shipping, like, you know, a lot of loads a day. They're scrambling all over. And plus they're putting out fires. Everybody in logistics puts out fires every single day. I don't care who you are. Something's happening and you don't know the timing. So when you do make those calls, make it meaningful. You know, it's not the quantity of the calls, it's the quality of the calls that are made. Bring that value up front as quickly as you possibly can. You have empathy for that shipper, understand the time that's necessary for him to spend with you, you know, to make it, like you say, Dan, congruent. Are you going to be congruent in that first 30 seconds, and will you drive it to the next step? Who knows, you know, but just take that time, you know, be cognizant of their time.
Yeah, I love that. Andrea, in closing, always awesome to have you here. Share with everybody how they can get a hold of you. If you guys haven't read Go for No, get on Amazon, grab that book today, because
everybody watching this has got to know Go for No by now.
They've got it. Well, actually, our audience seems to grow every week, and it's awesome, because it'll be like you'll get a DM from somebody, and I'll be like, they'll be like, oh, I've been watching for months, and I'm like, wow, like you've never.
A lot of secret watchers out there. Yeah, a lot of secret watchers.
Which is actually pretty cool.
So read goforno.com, goes right to the book on Amazon. There you go.
Nice.
Oh, perfect.
Nice.
Look at that. That's actually a really cool
But to the point of Go for No during the holidays and relaxing, Dan, as you said, you should take the time to relax, because recreation, and I learned this from Jack Canfield, means to recreate. So you recreate your spiritual, your emotional, your physical self over the holidays, and then you can start fresh on the first of the year.
Sounds like a plan.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Well, tomorrow's Wins and Lessons Friday. Can't wait for that. We got some beauties coming up. Andrea, thank you so much for being here again. And I can't wait to have you on again. It's just so much fun always talking about Go for No and different strategies and ideas. And I think every time you're on, we have these like aha moments that just go, wow, that's a really good idea. And I can't wait to implement it. So thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks, Andrea.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff.
And to our sponsor, American Logistics, Centurion Trucking. Daman, thank you so much, my friend. Remember, if like, subscribe, I don't know where you're watching, so I don't know where those little bells and whistles and all those dingy dangy thingies are. So you click them wherever they are and you get notified when we go live, 9 to 9:30 every day, Monday to Friday, Sales Chatter. Talk to you soon.
Have a good day.
Centurion Trucking, our motto is people before profit. Today's market requires more transparency, consistency, and focus on what our clients need to win. Centurion Trucking and American Logistics are poised to help their clients achieve and surpass their targets. If you're looking for a team that honors your needs, dreams, and aspirations, then get a hold of Daman at American Logistics or Centurion Trucking and start designing your